Hello and welcome to stage 6 of the World Championship in Through the Ages. We are now at a point where there are only 16 players left in the tournament, so it's getting really excited and there are only very strong players left in the tournament. And with only having 16 players left, there are also only 4 groups left and only one upper bracket group. So there are only 4 players left that managed to win all of their groups so far, and I'm one of those players, and I will be playing against the other 3 players. And yeah, so that should be very exciting. There are also 3 lower bracket groups. In the lower bracket groups, only the winner will advance to the next stage, and the next stage will then be the finals. And in the one remaining upper bracket group, the top 2 players will advance to the finals, and then the finals will be played in a group of 5. And yeah, and before we start taking a look at the first game, we will take a short look at the opponents that are in my group. And as you can see, I'm in a group with Binki, Himmelstosh and Airren. And now, Binki is in a really great form at the moment. He, at the last season of the International Championship, played for the first season in the Grandmaster division and immediately managed to score a silver medal. So that was a very nice start into the Grandmaster League for him. And he has shown some very strong results there. And also in this tournament so far, he has shown very strong results. All of those opponents in this group were seeded players at the beginning, so they didn't have to play stage 1. And then in stage 2, Binki scored 39 points. That is the maximum amount of points that you can get in a group. So he won all of his games. In stage 3, he had 33 points, which is still a very strong result. In stage 4, he had 30 points. And then maybe even the most impressive one is stage 5, where he managed to score 30.5 points, but it was in a very strong group with Marta Pecheur, Sugoi, and ST4 and KK, who at that point was the number 1 in the clicker rating. So he had a very tough group, and he managed to top that group with 30.5 points. So with that, and with the last season in the International Championship, he is really in a great form and will be a very tough opponent. Then next we have Himmelstosh. Himmelstosh is a player who is already participating in the tournaments for quite a while. Maybe if you are following my channel for very long already, then you can maybe remember him, because in the first full season that I covered from me in the International Championship, he was in my league in the Masters division, so I encountered him there. And also maybe if you all watched DJ Parson also for quite a while, I think in his earlier seasons in the or in the International Championship, he also had Himmelstosh in his group a few times. And Himmelstosh played in the Grandmaster division for one time. He then maybe more played in the Master division or in the Platinum division. Then I think he took a break for a while, and then he came back. And since then, definitely has shown some good performances. At the moment, he is still playing at Platinum division again, but he has shown some strong results in recently. And also, there was one time where Himmelstosh invited me, Airren, and Payada to a 4-player friendly game and async game, and then we played it. And after that, he provided some very deep analysis of this game, and so it seems like he's maybe someone who likes to dive very deep into a game analysis from time to time. And yeah, and in this tournament, the World Championship so far, he also has shown some very convincing results. In stage 2, he finished with 36 points. In stage 3, again 36 points. In stage 4, 35 points. So very consistently strong. And then in stage 5, there he had 23 points. But at this point, there were some very strong opponents. And there it is enough achievement to just finish at the first place. And yeah, he's maybe the biggest surprise in this group, because he at the moment didn't play in the Grandmaster division very often or something like that. But maybe he's just one of those players who, if they are really focusing on something and really putting a lot of energy into the games, then they can maybe get a lot out of it. So it will be very exciting and interesting to see what he will be able to do at this stage now. And then the last opponent in the group is Airren, and Airren is of course one of the best players of 3Hs, maybe even the best one. He was the number one in the clicker rating for quite a long time, I think more than 2 years. You can see the history of the clicker rating in the Google document, and there I think Airren was the number one in the clicker rating from the beginning of 2021 until 2023. He lost the number one to SD4 and KK, I think in the June update. But no, he has just shown some very consistent results. He played 5 seasons in the Grandmaster division of the International Championship, and he never finished worse than a second place. He finished at a second place 4 times and managed to win the International Championship 1 time. So he, whenever he plays, he just gets some very consistent results, and that of course results in his very strong clicker rating and his consistent results we can also see when we take a look at his performance so far in this tournament. In stage 2 he finished with 39 points, so only wins. In stage 3 he finished again with 39 points, again only wins. Then in stage 4 he only then dropped the first points. I think he was the player who stayed undefeated for the longest, but in stage 4 he then only finished at a second place in one 4-player game, but again managed to win all of the other ones and had 36 points. And then in stage 5, where there were some really strong opponents, then also he again won his group with 26 points. So some very strong performances of all of the players so far in the tournament. And so that will be a very interesting stage, some very strong, very interesting opponents, and the top 2 players will advance to the finals. I of course want to give my best to be one of those 2 players. And now we will take a very short look at the clicker rating, which just recently has been updated. And then after that we are going to take a look at the first game of the stage. And maybe you remember that I had some hopes of maybe getting the number 1 spot of the clicker rating after the update, but as you can see it sadly wasn't enough, and Airren is now back at the number 1. SD4 and KK dropped back to the 3rd position, so Airren is now the number 1 player and is back at his spot that he had for 2 years. I'm at least at the 2nd position now, so I also climbed 1 rank, and I also gained some rating, so that is definitely very nice. I'm now at the 2nd position. Interestingly, SD4 and KK, he showed some very promising results, and had the number 1 rating, but now he actually retired already. So he climbed up the leagues in the International and Intermezzo Championship, but before he could reach the Grandmaster division, he retired, so maybe he just wasn't interested in the game any longer, or maybe he has a lot of stuff going on in real life, I just don't know that. But he retired, so he isn't playing at the moment in any of the tournaments, I think. And also interesting to see Swin, the opponent that I had in my group in the stage before, is now at the 4th position of the clicker rating, so he has now also a very strong rating. And then the next opponent of this current group is Binki, who is now also in the top 10 of the rating. His very nice results are reflected. He gained plus 41 to his rating, and compared to the last update is now at the 9th position, so that is very strong. And then Himmelstosh is at the 34th position at the moment. As you can see, also gained a lot of rating, and if he continues showing such nice results, he definitely will climb further up. For now he's at the 34th position, which is still very strong, but he's a little bit behind, so he is maybe, as I said, maybe the biggest surprise to be in this upper 1 group, but with his very strong performances in this tournament, he has this spot definitely more than deserved. Alright, and now, without further ado, we are going to take a look at the first 4-player game of the stage, and so let's get right into it. As you can see, I'm in the 1st position in this game, and first of all we're going to take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we can see that there is some culture synergy in H3 with Fleming, Chaplin, Marlene, and the Hollywood being there. There's not that much lab synergy. There is Steve Jobs, there's Marie Curie, there's also the space flight, but no Bill Gates, no Sid Meier. There's also Pierre and Mandela. Then in H2 we have the ocean liner service and Maria. There are also some culture leaders with Shakespeare and Darwin. There's Nobel as a very interesting and strong economical leader. Catherine and Robespierre there with some military actions. There's James Cook but no Suez Canal. Then in H1 we have the two science wonders with Silk Road Universitas, the St. Peter's Basilica, Meiji Castle. We have two military action leaders in H1 with Joan of Arc and Jan Žižka. Barbarossa and Nostradamus can help with the strength. Columbus can be a nice transitional leader. Gutenberg is there. Saladin as a very solid leader. And And then in my first position, I had to choose if I maybe want to take a leader or if I maybe want to take the library. And now the problem is if I take the library, then I thought that it is very likely that Confucius will be taken away and that Hammurabi will be taken away. It could be, or it's actually likely that Ashoka then will fall down to one civil action for me. So if I take the library, then I very likely would go for Ashoka at the next turn, but I don't like him too much in first position. And so at the end I was willing to rather go for Confucius. Then of course it is very likely that the library and the Colosseum will be taken away. The Colossus might even stay on two civil actions. But I think with Confucius it is fine with the additional science to just skip the HA wonder, and also there could still be the pyramids and the Rome roads coming out of the deck, so I might be getting a strong wonder there. There's Universitas and Silk Road, two wonders that are very strong to get early on, so I was at this point willing to just go for Confucius. I think he's quite a strong leader, and I liked it more to go for him with potentially either getting maybe something like pyramids at some point, or maybe even just skipping the wonder. I liked it more than taking the library and then very likely getting Ashoka together with that in the first position. Binki is now going for the library, can even go for library and Aristotle, so that's definitely not bad. Himmelstosh goes for Hammurabi and can take a yellow card, will go for the urban growth. And Irene will go for the urban growth and for the Colosseum. And a Colosseum can definitely be nice, especially maybe with being in fourth position, having a little bit of protection against the military and the additional military action might just be quite nice. There is sadly no pyramids, and as you can see the Rome roads did come out, but they are at this spot, so if I want to take them, I very likely have to take them for two civil actions. Otherwise I think it's very likely that Himmelstosh will actually go for the Rome roads, so I have now to ask myself the question if I am willing to pay two civil actions for the Rome roads. First of all, I go for Confucius, I build a mine, and I was not willing to go for the Rome roads. I mean, it maybe could be fine. Then Himmelstosh only has the Colossus left, but with there being some very interesting early wonders available, and with having the additional science from Confucius, which maybe allows for something potentially like early iron and stuff, I was willing to just not take any of those wonders, and now I have one civil action left. I could maybe say I want to make it as likely as possible that there is wonder still available for me at the next turn, so I could take the cultural heritage, so that there are as few cards discarded as possible, but I thought it might actually be quite likely that if I even take one card, then that the Colossus could still potentially be available for me at the next turn, because Binki and Himmelstosh both won't take Ashoka. One question is also what happens with the engineering genius, because if I take, and that is also what I do now, the frugality, then the engineering genius will stay on 2, and it will definitely fall down to 1 for Himmelstosh if it isn't taken away, and it could be quite strong for Himmelstosh if he goes for Rome roads and the engineering genius. That could be a very strong start for him, so he could maybe take the cultural heritage and then hope that Binki maybe also doesn't take a card from the row, and engineering genius stays in 2 civil actions, but at the end I just wanted to have the better card for myself, and I also thought maybe now that engineering genius would fall down for 1 to Himmelstosh, and that would be quite strong for him. Maybe Binki is even more willing to maybe just take it for 2, which I think maybe could be a little bit too costly potentially for him, but might also be fine. He has a wonder that he maybe wants to finish early, and so I was hoping that he will take it for 2, so that Himmelstosh doesn't get it for 1 together with Rome roads and having Hammurabi. I think that could be quite strong. Then I draw the historic territory and also a colonization card, Binki builds a mine, increases population, and he just takes the engineering genius. I was happy to see that. He doesn't necessarily need to elect Aristotle already. Then Himmelstosh will indeed go for the Roman roads, goes for Hammurabi, takes the rich land, builds the lab first with the urban growth, can then at the next turn use the rich land for the mine, so that's also not bad. And also, just one resource worse, maybe then going for the engineering genius. And then Airren will go for Ashoka, elects him, increases population, and interestingly is building the lab first. That means that he uses the yellow card, doesn't have it available then any longer for Ashoka, but maybe he thinks he has quite nice chances to maybe get the Ashoka bonus nonetheless, maybe a nice yellow card at the following turn, and maybe just wants to start with the lab first rather than going for the mine. At my turn I see the historic territory, I don't want to see the colonization card, the development of religion is revealed, I will take the free religion, and I thought I either maybe want to, I definitely want to build my lab, I want to get the economy going, I don't want to delay that. I could potentially build a lab and then maybe just grab a breakthrough, that could be quite a nice card to take. I could of course also still think about the Colossus, I even seeded a colony into the deck now, but there is no Suez Canal, and with Silk Road and Universitas being there, and with there maybe being some interesting cards to take for 2 civil actions, and if I want to take the religion and build a second lab, I can't take one of those for 2 and the Colossus, so I come to the conclusion that I don't want to go for the Colossus here. And then the question was, do I want to just grab a breakthrough, or do I maybe want to switch into Saladin now? And at the end I went for Saladin. I think the additional civil action is very, very strong that early on, and now Confucius retires very early, but he still has given me 2 signs, one for seeding, one when he leaves play. I still think that's very nice, basically like grabbing a breakthrough, and now I can get additional civil action from Saladin, and also I built a second lab now, so I think I was quite happy about it, having 5 civil actions. Already having 5 civil actions might also be quite nice. For example, if there is at the next turn Iron on 3 civil actions, if I have only 4, then I could just maybe take it, or maybe I would not take it. But now that I have 5 civil actions, I could take the Iron, develop it, go for an upgrade, so that might be nice. And I just think the additional civil action is just very nice to have, and if I don't take Saladin, one of my opponents will be able to go for him, and so I just went for him myself. I draw another colonization card and also the foray. Binki is going for Aristotle now, takes the swordsman, is willing to pay 2 civil actions for that, but he scores of course 1 science, has a military technology already in hand now, and then delays the second lab in order to start building on the library. Himmelstosh also can take the free religion, builds the 3rd mine now with the rich land, takes the breakthrough and rich land. Interestingly, he takes this copy of the rich land, and I think the reason for that might be that, as we can see in Airren's turn now, he has now only yellow cards available on 1 civil action. So if Himmelstosh would have taken this copy of rich land, then now the other copy would have been here, and the bread and circuses would have been at this spot, meaning it would be a lot easier for Airren to maybe get the Ashoka bonus going, and maybe that was the reason why Himmelstosh grabbed the other copy of the rich land. Now Airren starts working on the Colosseum, which interestingly will mean that he will skip the 3rd mine for now, but that allows him to then grab the breakthrough, and he is interestingly also willing to grab the warfare. I found it a little bit interesting, because I think the alchemy could also be quite interesting for him to maybe get some economy upgrades, but the warfare is also not bad to have. There's only 1 strategy in 4-player games, and then the Republic is even more an option for him maybe at some point. He has a way to get some military going, and you maybe just like that more than going for the alchemy. I was happy about it, because that actually means that the alchemy will be available for me, which gives me something to upgrade, and it will even be available for 1 civil action for me. So I will go for the alchemy, I can increase my science production, and then I take the rich land, and there are not that many other options. I just take the bread and circuses. I don't like the bread and circuses too much when I already have a free religion, but on the other hand there's also Pierre in the game, so I think it's not bad to have it in hand, and I also think there are just not really any other options. The rich land will be nice to get some mine upgrades going quicker, and I can go for another upgrade at some point, so I was quite happy that there is something there to upgrade. It's always the risk, of course, if you don't have an HA wonder, that you can't spend your resources nicely, but with the alchemy now I can spend my resources, and that I think is quite strong for me. I just keep the 2 colonization cards. I even draw another one. Very likely I won't be able to keep all of them in hand sadly. And I also draw the good harvest. Binki will now finish the library without the engineering genius. So he otherwise he would have corruption, and he wants to get this monarchy. The next turn, if he maybe takes another technology with Aristotle, he has 8 science and can develop it immediately. He's done more civil actions, can then maybe even take more technologies and get even more value out of Aristotle. So I think it makes sense that he wants to have the monarchy here. Himmelstosh seeds in the development of planning is revealed, and the options are development of warfare, politics, and civil life. Interestingly, as you can see, Himmelstosh went for the development of politics, but the other options just didn't work for him. Warfare, for that he didn't have a free population, and for civil life, he also actually can't do anything. He has only 1 food, he has no free population, he had no technology in hand, so he just didn't have any option for that, and with that was forced to go for the development of politics. Maybe he has drawn a knight's tactic with that, because he is actually willing to grab the knights now for 3 civil actions, interestingly. Maybe he also just wasn't too happy about the other options that are available on the row, so he is just grabbing the knights, has now the technology in hand, so that is maybe guaranteed to be able to increase his strength at some point when it will be needed, and then he just builds 2 stages of the Rome roads. Airren offers me the trade routes agreements pact, and he wants to use food as resource. I could then use resource as food, and it was a relatively close decision for me. I thought maybe Airren, of course, with having a Shoka, maybe he will get more value out of this pact potentially. Can maybe make it that he can use it every turn. Of course, then he will have less population at some point, but with getting the additional food from a Shoka, maybe that could be fine. But I mean, I still could get potentially an advantage against the 2 other players. Just that at this point I don't really know yet if that will make a difference. There is the chance that it could maybe make a difference, that I get an additional population out before the end of the age, but I just don't know it, and I felt Airren gets some nice value out of it. He could maybe even just finish the Colosseum this turn. That maybe also could potentially open up some other options for him, and if he can use food as resources. And so at the end I was not willing to accept this pact, but it was a close decision, and it could also be the right move to maybe just accept it, just in case that maybe the ability to use resources food could at the end mean that I get an additional population out, and then that could be quite strong. But at the moment I have no upgraded resource production, so I don't want to use resource food too often, and so at the end I rejected the pact. Airren builds 1 stage of the Colosseum, also builds the 3rd mine now, increases population, and now he can also get a full Shoka bonus. He takes the theology. He probably doesn't have a colony for Columbus, because Columbus is of course quite an interesting leader to have when having a Shoka, as he is a nice transitional leader, but he instead takes the theology. Otherwise this would have been gone, and maybe it could be nice to have it as a happy face solution, and with not having a colony, or maybe I think if he had a colony, I think Columbus could be quite nice. So I assume that he has no colony, and with having no colony, and then of course it's also a bit of a gamble to go for Columbus. There's also no Suez Canal, so waiting for another leader I think is also very fine. Now it's my turn. I don't want to see the good harvest. At the moment I just thought I can do some nice stuff for my economy, so I don't necessarily want to push the deck, which could then mean that I have to be concerned about strength earlier. So I just skip the politics phase and I go for the Silk Road. I don't have a wonder, and the Silk Road I think is quite a nice wonder to have. I thought maybe it's not that likely that one of my opponents will go for it, but it could be possible. But maybe I could also get it for cheaper the next turn, but then the question is, what do? I could just take lots of cards, but I just felt it is better to invest some civil actions already this turn on taking it. Also, it's then for certain that I will be able to get it. Then one card that I definitely wanted to take is this Urban Growth. That will allow me, together with the Silk Road, to go for 1 upgrade to the Alchemy for free. So that could be quite interesting. And then the question is, first I thought maybe I could even take Richland and Patriotism, just taking a lot of yellow cards, which then could mean that I can get quite a lot of value out of the Silk Road. But it would also mean I have a full hand. I invest a lot of civil actions into just taking some cards, and a full hand will maybe leave me a little bit inflexible, which could be annoying. And so at the end I came to the conclusion that I want to build the first step of the Silk Road already, and then I can only take 1 of the cards. He could still maybe think about a rich land, because being able to get into potentially iron mines or maybe coal mines later on more quickly could be quite strong. But the patriotism is just a very nice synergy with the Silk Road, and also, as we can see, Jan Žižka and Barbarossa are coming down the row. Himmelstosh has taken the knights, Binki has taken the swordsmen, so there's at least the potential that maybe one of my opponents will go for a little bit of a strength push relatively quickly, and just having the patriotism in hand will give me will mean that I'm more safe. I always have some additional resources in hand for the military, and also two additional military actions, and with that I wanted to have the patriotism. Also, with already building one step, I thought that maybe if there are some additional resources revealed, which is not that unlikely, because their development of planning is out, and so far there have been no additional resources revealed. And so it is definitely possible, and if that should happen, then now that I've already built the first step, it could be an option to just then, if I get additional resources, finish the Silk Road and use the urban growth to get an upgrade to the alchemy for free. Then I have a lot of science production going, so I just thought building the step might also be nice to potentially have this option available. I keep the colonization cards. I draw the vast territory, so that could be interesting, but it is also quite a commitment to seed it, or it could potentially help another player, so I at this point didn't really plan to seed it, but who knows, maybe depending on what cards I get, it could be an option. Binki now goes for Jan Žižka, also another copy of the Engineering Genius. He has still the Engineering Genius A. With that, he maybe wants to if possible, go for an H1 wonder anyway, and Engineering Genius 1 will make that even cheaper. And with Jan Žižka, he has a nice leader that he can go for once he doesn't want to have Aristotle any longer. Himmelstosh this turn finishes the Rome roads, goes for Barbarossa, develops the knights with the breakthrough, elects Barbarossa, and takes the monarchy, can use this ability one time already, and I think he could have maybe just developed the knights, but I think he maybe had a little bit of hand space issues, and he could have maybe just developed the knights, not use Barbarossa, but he is willing to use Barbarossa, and at the next turn he can maybe just go for a very nice monarchy revolution, potentially use Barbarossa again to get out of corruption. So Barbarossa is definitely giving some nice value, and in general he is a leader that I like quite a lot. And even without using him at the moment, he would already be out of corruption, but of course there might be some developments revealed, and Airren seeds, and there is a development revealed that gives additional resources, food and science, the development of trade routes. Airren is now willing to go for the iron and is developing it, goes for an upgrade, increases population, has already 3 colors in hand, so gets again at a full Ashoka bonus. And now it is my turn, and there are definitely a bunch of options available. I could potentially do the turn that I just talked about at the last turn, with finishing the Silk Road and then using the urban growth to get another alchemy upgrade going. I think that has the potential to be quite strong. I thought about, or I tried some turns with going for iron, but that just didn't work out that nicely, and I rather wanted to wait for this copy of iron, or if not, then maybe just go for coal. There's also a copy of Knights, the event deck. Maybe it will still take a little bit of a time, but I don't have any military tech yet, so it could be a little bit dangerous to skip the Knights, but it also is a little bit costly, because the thing is, I want to get out of corruption. I could, for example, just increase population and go for an upgrade, but I really want to use this urban growth for this upgrade, to make use of the Silk Road bonus, to make very nice use out of the urban growth, and then to get out of corruption. If I don't finish the Silk Road, I would have to increase my population, maybe build a warrior. That's something I really didn't like. I could maybe just take the knights, develop it, build a knight. Himmelstosh went for knights, so he maybe will reveal a tactic at some point, but it would be a little bit costly. It maybe would be the safest approach, potentially, but I didn't like it too much, and so at the end I went for the Code of Laws. I have a bunch of science. I will get even more science production once I finish the Silk Road and once I get the second upgrade to the alchemy going, so I hopefully have enough science to afford it. Having even more civil actions synergizes nicely with the Silk Road, so that I can maybe even take more yellow cards, use the Silk Road bonus more often, and then after developing the Code of Laws, I will just finish the Silk Road. I liked it more having the additional civil action now than just finishing the Silk Road and going for one upgrade without taking the Code of Laws. Now I'm at 6 civil action, that is very strong. I skipped the Knights, but at least I have the Saladin, so in case of an emergency I can use him for strength, and also have 6 civil actions, so I also thought that if knights are not the next copy of knight or maybe swordsman is available, even if it is for 3, I still can take it without it maybe being too costly for myself. So with that I was willing to skip the knights, and I just wanted to finish the Silk Road so that I can get out of corruption without having to spend any military actions, increasing my chances that I maybe just draw a tactic for myself. And yeah, so I was relatively happy about my position, but I was a little bit concerned that I could potentially end up being vulnerable, especially if I should miss out on those military technologies. And I don't draw a tactic yet, instead the pestilence and the immigration. Binki seeds and the development of crafts is revealed. That is quite strong for him because it allows him to potentially even go for 2 iron upgrades immediately. And no, instead he wants to have the knights, scores another science with Aristotle, so he doesn't want to go for 2 iron upgrades. Instead he then switches to Yanshishka and builds another warrior, reveals the legion tactic, is at 4 strength, gets a little bit of value out of Yanshishka. So Aristotle has given him 4 science, which is fine, but also not that strong maybe, but definitely fine. And then now it's Himmelstosh's turn. He will see the development of agriculture is revealed, so he has even more food, which is of course nice to have with Barbarossa. And maybe you remember the last turn, after he finished it, he had no corruption, but there were that many developments revealed that gave additional stuff that now he is actually full corruption, but he can still do the revolution. And then with building another knight and with building another warrior, both with Barbarossa, he is now at 6 strength and is out of corruption like this. He is interestingly not revealing a tactic yet, but that doesn't necessarily have to mean that he has no tactic, because if he would reveal a tactic now, of course he would be stronger, but he would not draw a single card, meaning he just couldn't do anything with the strength that he has at the next turn. So even if he has a tactic, it might be better to just draw a card now instead of revealing the tactic. Airren accedes, so the event deck is flipped now. That went now relatively quickly after my turn. The development of markets are revealed, so even more food and resources that the players can take. Airren takes resources, increases population, goes for 1 upgrade, another upgrade, just finishes the Colosseum, as now is Airren's fully upgraded, finish the Colosseum, still gets the full Ashoka bonus, maybe at the next turn he then can maybe go for Joan of Arc or potentially for Gutenberg to then replace Ashoka. Also he builds a warrior, he wants to make sure probably that he isn't the weakest. And he also doesn't take a single card, so I was kinda hoping that maybe a military technology could be available for myself to get stronger, but now there's only 1 card revealed, and there won't be a military technology available. And now of course I had to think about what I want to do to get a little bit stronger, because Himmelstosh is at 6 strength, he could potentially have an aggression. And yeah, if I don't go for the theocracy and stay on 2 military actions, then I could of course just take the strength of Saladin. That could be an option. But in general, it could get a little bit dangerous with only being in 2 military actions. Himmelstosh, if he reveals a tactic, could get quite strong. Binki could go for swordsman. Maybe if he has something like phalanx, he could even potentially still go for that. Even though at the moment he's missing 1 science to go for knights, so that maybe makes it a little bit less threatening. But he definitely also has some potential to get stronger. So I felt that I could be a little bit vulnerable if I stay on 2 military actions. I also don't know for certain yet if I get a military technology. I was really hoping that I will get one. Airren has only 4 civil actions, so for him it would be quite expensive, for example, to take one for 3. And yeah, but I still at the end thought it is maybe the safest to just go for the theocracy. I already have 6 civil actions, and then it is maybe not that bad that the theocracy doesn't give me an additional civil action, and all of the other things I think are very useful for me. The 3rd military action, the happy face probably also will be useful, the strength will be useful, so I was willing to go for the theocracy. Of course, at some point I will lose Saladin, then I will have only 5 civil actions. That could be a little bit limiting. But I still thought that the theocracy is nice enough here to potentially have maybe a little bit of some issues later on with being low in civil actions. I can increase my population 2 times this turn. I could again, maybe to get out of corruption, go for this upgrade without the urban growth, but I didn't really like to do this, and so I just built a warrior to get out of corruption, use the Silk Road, and go for this upgrade to the alchemy. I'm now at 5 science production, which is very nice. With my last civil action, I then took the cultural heritage. That of course also synergized a little bit with the Silk Road. I would say not as much as the patriotism, because the one additional culture that you get is maybe not that important, but still I can play it for 3 science and 3 culture. That's definitely not bad, and with that I was willing to take that card, and I was really hoping that maybe at the next turn there will be military technology available that will allow me to build some units. Now at the end of my turn, it is the question, do I want to take the strength of Saladin or the civil action of Saladin? If I don't take the strength, I am the weakest, so of course you could say I definitely should take the strength. But yeah, if I don't take the civil actions, then I miss out on something for certain. And if I take the if I take the strength, I miss out on something for certain. If I take the civil actions, I could potentially get hit by something, but that's not for certain. But of course, the danger is probably bigger if I take the civil actions, because in the worst case scenario, many of my opponents could see it, and then there could even be multiple strength events revealed potentially. But I, at this point, still was willing to take the civil action. I thought turn maybe could be a little bit nicer if I have another civil action available at the next turn. Also, I thought Himmelstosh had not that many cards available, so maybe it could be that he won't push. And Airren has not that much strength, so maybe he also won't push. It's of course a bit risky, but at this point I made a decision to just again take the civil action from Saladin, and it's a little bit dangerous. Maybe I should just take the strength, but no, at this point I took the civil action. I was very happy to draw the medieval army tactic, so now I have a tactic available, and if I should get the knights at my next turn, I can increase my strength by quite a bit. Also, as you can see, I probably already get punished for my decision. I mean, maybe Binki wouldn't have ceded if I would have taken the strength, and maybe I would have then still ended up at least losing 1 civil action from the call to arms, but now I lose 2 civil actions, and taking the strength from Saladin would have only cost me 1 civil action, so now in hindsight it probably would have been better to take the strength, but also, as I said, maybe Binki would then not have ceded, maybe would have gotten stronger, and then there would have been a chance that I still would have lost 1 civil action, but at least Binki then would have to cede. So no, I am probably in hindsight I should have taken the strength from Saladin here. Himmelstosh doesn't see it, so at least there is not another event revealed. He will go for warriors, and now he will reveal a tactic. The phalanx tactic is now at 10 strength, and he can do this and also go for the iron with the ritual, and he has just enough resource to even go for 3 upgrades immediately, so that is a very strong turn for him, getting a lot of economy going and also being the strength leader at the moment, so that's definitely not bad. There are still no knights revealed for now, but now there's a copy of knights revealed, so I was really hoping that Airren won't take it, and I think it's also very likely because he also lost 1 civil action from the call to arms, so it would just be too costly, I think, and instead he goes for Joan of Arc. He still needs a new leader. He has at least 1 religion, so Joan of Arc is giving him some value, especially because at the moment he's also a bit behind in strength. And then with his last 2 civil actions, he is just grabbing the St. Peter's Basilica, has a lot of resource production, and together with Joan of Arc, it will be a nice thing to invest into, also with having the Colosseum. So after finishing St. Peter's Basilica, he should have enough happy faces for quite a long time. And so I think that makes some sense, but he also can get out of corruption with building 2 warriors. Of course, he commits quite heavily on 2 warriors, but it also makes sure that he is one of the 2 strongest now, and at least it gets him out of corruption. And then maybe he can just upgrade his warriors to either swordsman or rifleman at some point. At least with taking 2 cards, it even means that the knights will be available for 2 civil actions for me, which is nice. So I definitely take the knights. I developed the knights. I could potentially now play the patriotism and build the knights with that. That could be very nice, because who knows when I will have another nice opportunity to use the patriotism. But the problem is, if I use the patriotism, then I would have corruption. I could still think about it. I would draw some additional cards, and at least I would still gain 1 resource basically out of it, because it gives me 3 additional ones, but the card draw is not that important now that I have the tactic and we are still in H1. So at the end I just really wanted to get out of corruption, building the 2 knights like that, revealing the tactic, so now I'm the strongest. I was very happy that I have that going now. Of course I lost to the call to arms, but now that is maybe not too bad. I have a lot of civil actions, and I was hoping that I'm in a decent position now, with having 6 civil actions, very nice science production, being the strength leader at the moment, and also having the Silk Road and being able to maybe get some additional value out of that with having all of those yellow cards. So I was relatively happy, and then maybe I can go for coal at some point, because I will be the player without iron. I have now 1 civil action left. I could potentially just think about playing the cultural heritage to get a Silk Road bonus this turn. There could potentially be Dark Ages, but maybe also shouldn't be too concerned about it. And no, but at the end I made a decision to rather go for the irrigation. First of all, one problem is that if there is nothing, for example no coal or something available at the next turn, then I could have some issues getting out of corruption, because I won't have a free population if I don't have anything to upgrade. Then I might just have corruption, and the irrigation could just be quite nice, being able to get out of corruption. So that could be nice to have that available as an option. And also, taking the irrigation will anti-age now, meaning that Binki will lose the engineering genius. I thought that if I don't anti-age, Binki for example could take the Universitas, use the engineering genius, maybe develop a military tech, build some units to get out of corruption, and then at the next turn he can finish the Universitas very cheaply. Thought it could be definitely a decent turn for him. And so I thought it could also be nice to make it that he loses the engineering genius, that he loses those 2 resources. That's definitely not the only argument to take the irrigation, but it also influenced my decision a little bit. I can take the civil action from Saladin, and this turn I can even do that while being the strongest. I keep 1 event in hand and 2 colonization cards. H2 starts, Binki has to lose the engineering genius. He will now go for the irrigation, also for the swordsman. Interestingly, builds a swordsman, goes for some upgrades to get stronger so that he isn't the weakest, takes the bread and circuses, and also starts with going for 1 upgrade to the irrigation. Now it's Himmelstosh's turn, and he won't see it. He will go for the alchemy, develops it, goes for 1 upgrade. Another upgrade is now at 5 science production, that is quite strong. He has an uprising issue, but for that he will just disband his warrior, and is still one of the 2 strongest, and yeah, probably that is the best way to deal with that. Airren is the weakest, and he has Joan of Arc, so now it could be interesting to see how much effort he maybe puts into getting stronger. First of all, he offers the naval trade agreement to Binki. Airren wants to have the additional blue tokens, but Binki rejects this pact, and Airren is just going for Nobel, even for 3 civil actions, even with being low civil actions, but I think that makes quite a lot of sense. He still needs a government form, and with the additional science from Nobel, I think that will be a lot easier for him. Otherwise, he could definitely get into some troubles with the science production, but like this, he is at 4 science, and no, it's a very early Nobel, and I think for an early Nobel, it's definitely often not a bad move to just take him, even if it is for 3 civil actions in a 4-player game. And then Airren has 1 civil action left, and that 1 civil action will actually be enough for him to get out of corruption, because he has 4 food lying around, and can now just make it that he gets out of corruption. Now it is my turn. I am the strongest, and with that I was willing to push the wealthy territory into the deck. And the event revealed is the historic territory that I seeded earlier, and I had to ask myself here if I really want to bid for this, because if I bid for it I can't rebuild this unit. I don't have a free population for that, and then I am it's not that easy to still be the strongest. And also I thought that I maybe then can go for irrigation. That will now actually be quite helpful to get out of corruption, and then I can maybe increase my population at the next turn again. And with that I was willing to bid for the colony. The happy face could still be somewhat useful. The 6 culture at this point, maybe not that important, but it's still 6 culture. And so I was willing to send a knight away for this colony. And then this turn I take the cannons. Having that technology available is quite nice. Could maybe also think about some yellow cards, but I just think it's very nice to have that available now that I have the chance to take it for 2 civil actions. And then now, as we can see that it is relatively nice to have the irrigation, because now I can get out of corruption with that. Of course I could potentially go for wonder, but with only being bronze mines that would be quite expensive. Could potentially block me from something like ocean liner service at some point, and so I rather didn't want to go for wonder here. Instead, I then went for the irrigation. I go for 2 upgrades without using the rich land. I was hoping that I can maybe still use the Silk Road bonus for that one at some point, and with going for 2 upgrades, I will have hopefully, unless there are reds, 4 food at the next turn, which then allows me to rebuild a knight to then hopefully take the strength lead again. And now with my last civil action, I played the cultural heritage using the Silk Road bonus, getting 3 science and 3 culture. And yeah. And then it was again the question if I want to take the strength from Saladin or the civil action, and I again stayed consistent to my decision before and again took the civil action. That is of course again somewhat risky. There could again be potentially some bad cards revealed. Yeah, so it might be the wrong decision. It's just that I have it seen very often that a player takes the strength from Saladin and then it just doesn't do anything at the end. So I think generally the strength of Saladin is used too often. Maybe I am getting into the other extreme here, but no. If I don't get punished, I just have an additional civil action, and if I use him for strength, I just lose something for certain. And now, with having the Silk Road, every additional civil action could be nice, could mean that I get an additional yellow card, and so I was willing to again take the civil action from Saladin here. Also, I was quite happy about my draw, the classic army tactic. With that, of course, the cannons are not that important, but it's just very, very nice having a tactic available that early. And also the scientific cooperation maybe has some potential if one of my opponents will be willing to accept this pact. Binki Seeds, and there's no strength event, which is very nice. It's instead a colony. I can't really bid for that, otherwise I would drop just too low in strength. Maybe I would not be able to rebuild my second army at the next turn, so I just pass on that. And now I also was not too unhappy that I sent my colonization cards away and my unit for the historic territory, because as you can see, Binki even has to bid 5 to win it, so I wouldn't have been able to win it for 1 unit, even if I maybe would have skipped the historic territory. And now Binki is able to win the inhabited territory. As you can see, he didn't bid the maximum for the historic. He had already those colonization cards in hand, but now he maybe gets the better colony and gets some additional yellow tokens. He then builds a warrior and builds a 3rd farm to get 2 legion tactics going, getting a little bit of additional culture production, getting a lot of food production. He is then also willing to take the Magic Castle and the Engineering Genius. He has taken all of the Engineering Geniuses so far in this game, and with the Magic Castle he can use both of those and also can get the Magic Castle very cheaply like that. He could have alternatively taken Universitas for some more economical value, but then the Engineering Genius only could have used for 3 resources, and the Magic Castle for some additional strength of course also might be quite nice for him. Himmelstosh also seeds, and as the knowledge of the ancients revealed, I gained sadly only 1 additional science, but no, at least it's no strength event, and Airren and Binki gained the most out of it. Himmelstosh is then willing to pay 3 civil actions for the selective breeding, get some additional production going like that, and of course the additional food production is quite nice to have together with Barbarossa. Airren won't seed, so in this case I actually didn't get punished, and now I will have an additional civil action, so this time it worked out nicely for me to not take the strength from Saladin. Airren will again offer the naval trade agreement, this time to Himmelstosh. He still wants to have the blue tokens, but again the pact gets rejected. And then Airren will go for the architecture, develops the architecture, and can just finish the St. Peter's Basilica like that. He gets out of corruption, there's a lot of happy faces now, and the architecture, he has enough science, I think, to afford it, with with Nobel now, can maybe potentially go for even more wonders, and also he has didn't upgrade any urban buildings yet, so the architecture also might save him quite a lot of resources potentially. Now at my turn I'm the weakest, I also have no event in it, but I have the scientific cooperation, and with having a bunch of science saved up and having the potential to get some value out of it, I definitely at least wanted to try to offer that one. And I made a decision to offer it to Airren. Sadly, he rejects it. I had some hope that he will accept it, because he has even more science saved up than me. He has a little bit less production, but he didn't upgrade any labs yet, so he has also the potential to maybe get scientific method at some point. He has Nobel from Nobel prizes later on, so I was hoping that maybe he would accept it. I thought the other players probably would reject it with being on lower science and also not having that much production. So I was a little bit Unhappy that Irene didn't accept it, but he maybe has already his next turn planned out, and maybe he doesn't really plan to develop any of those technologies, and he needs to go for a government form. That will be one technology that costs a lot of science. I already have a government form at the moment, so at the end maybe he just thought that he at the end will be the worst. Will have the worst side of the pact, or will get less out of it, and sadly rejects the pact. This turn I can increase my population, and I definitely want to rebuild this knight, and I also was willing to use the patriotism. Who knows if I get another nice chance to use it. I can use the 3 resource very nicely. The question is of course if I can use the 1 military action or if I will just waste that. What I also definitely want to take is the efficient upgrade, a wave of nationalism with being on bronze mines. I think it's very nice to get those additional resources. Also, with having the Silk Road, it's of course very nice to get quite a bunch of yellow cards. I could potentially even take another yellow card, like the revolutionary idea or the efficient upgrade. But then I would have a full hand, and that definitely could be a bit problematic. For example, if coal is available at the next turn, it could just be very important to have a free hand to be able to take it, develop it, maybe even go for 2 upgrades. I have enough resource for that. Even if it is in 3 civil actions, I want to have a free hand space. The question is then what to do with my last 2 civil actions. And I mean, I have drawn the classic army tactic now. Both of the opponents that are playing right in front of me, Himmelstosh and Airren, both are still on warrior, so both of them might still want to have the rifleman. So if I don't take the swordsman now, I might be in danger of not being able to get the rifleman to get a classic army tactic going at some point. And so I thought it maybe it's just the safest and best to take the swordsman, and when I take them anyway, I can also develop the swordsman already. I have enough science for that, and that will allow me to use the 1 free military action that I have thanks to the patriotism that I played with the Silk Road bonus. So I can go for 1 more upgrade, going up to 12 strength. Being at 12 strength actually also might be quite nice, because Binki at his turn could potentially finish the Magic Castle, could then potentially also go for 1 upgrade to the swordsman, then he would be at 12 strength. So now that I'm at 12 strength, I would still be the strongest after his turn if he goes for that. If I'm only at 11, he might take over the strength lead. And also I can just use the free military action that I have. I can know now for certain that I will be able to go for the classic army tactic, so I just thought it might be best to go for those swordsmen. And even when spending those resources, I still have the potential to go for 2 coal upgrades at the next turn, because I could use the Ridgeland, for example, with the Silk Road bonus, and then the efficient upgrade, and I have just enough resources to potentially go for 2 coal upgrade at the next turns in case the coal should be available. I draw 3 cards, a colonization card, a Cold War, and a developed territory. Binki seeds, and the new deposits are revealed. All of my opponents have their irons fully upgraded and gain quite a bit more resource out of that. That is of course not great for me, but maybe I can at least use the 3 resource quite nicely, hopefully. Binki this turn will finish the Magic Castle, but without using this engineering genius, otherwise he probably doesn't have an easy way to get out of corruption. He takes the revolutionary idea, and then he will increase his population, upgrades 1 warrior, takes the journalism. That of course could be a nice technology to have to invest into. He has some additional food production, so maybe he can afford putting some additional workers in there. And also, as you can see, he indeed went for the Magic Castle and the swordsman, so he's now at 12 strength, but I'm still the strongest. Also, as you can see, a coal is coming down the row, which I was very happy to see, so I was hoping that I will be able to go for some coal upgrades at my next turn, which definitely improves my position. Himmelstosh will just go for the Statue of Liberty and finishes it. Get some additional yellow tokens. With that he can maybe get even more value potentially out of Barbarossa. He is only on monarchy for now, but he has a lot of resources, and that is just a very nice way to invest those resources. If he goes for the Kremlin, then I think he has some unhappy face issues, because he wouldn't have the 3 additional yellows, and he would have even 1 less happy face. So the statue is maybe just a very nice way for him to invest some resources. He maybe wasn't willing to put the work into journalism, and as I said, together with Barbarossa, the yellow tokens might be quite strong, and it might just allow him to get a lot of population out. Then he is also taking the efficient upgrade, can maybe use it very nicely on the 2nd upgrade of his farms, and he also is using Barbarossa for 1 warrior. Airren offers the international trade agreement to Binki. Airren wants to have additional food, and Binki will get additional resource production. And Airren this turn will just grab the Gremlin, and as you can see, thanks to going for the architecture the turn before, he can now take the Gremlin and finish it. That also makes very nice use out of the happy faces that he has. He has now more civil military action, so I think that is a situation where the Gremlin is very, very strong. And maybe that is also the reason why he didn't want to accept the pact. Maybe he already had this plan and thought that if he goes for that, he maybe won't really develop a technology. Yes, and also as we can see, he is willing to go for that, even though it is a constitutional monarchy on the row. But as we also can see, all of his opponents actually have an H1 government, so very likely he maybe just can get a constitutional monarchy going at the next turn. And then the last civil action that Airren does here might have quite some consequences for me, because he actually goes for a hate draft here and takes the coal away. And that definitely has the potential to hurt me quite a lot. I would be able to go for 2 upgrades at my next turn, and then maybe even go for those 2 upgrades while grabbing some new yellow cards, so that would be very strong for me. And now it might actually be quite difficult for me to find something nice to invest my resources into. I can't really upgrade anything at the moment, I don't have a free population, so that is actually could be quite bad for me, and I think it might be worth it to go for this high trade draft. Of course, in 4-player games you have to be very careful with that. He could have taken Urban Growth or Richland instead, he could have taken even a Journalism instead. Maybe with having the additional happy face in the architecture it would also be nice to have, but he maybe just sees how much that would improve my position to go get a coal now, and with that he is willing to go for the hate draft, which of course I was not really happy to see. And then it is my turn, and I definitely get a bit lucky here, because as you can see, the second copy of coal is immediately available for me, and that is of course very, very nice for me. And probably quite annoying for Airren. I think if he would have known that the second copy shows up immediately, then I think he wouldn't be worth it. He wouldn't be willing to go for this hate draft, of course. I still have to pay 2 additional civil actions now, but I think that alone would not be enough reason to go for the hate draft. But now, no. But if I would have not gotten this coal, I think my turn would have been quite annoying, so I think I'm quite lucky here, and I was very happy that the second copy of coal is available now. Also, I'm still the strongest, and I want to see it. I have this classic army tactic available, so I was confident enough to push the Cold War into the deck, and the event revealed is the scientific breakthrough, and that gives me 5 additional science, which is quite nice, and maybe also, of course, helps my opponents, but it's definitely a fine event for me. And in this turn, of course, I have to go for the coal. It's just the easiest way for me to get out of corruption. If I don't take it, then another player might be inclined to also go for a hate draft. So now that there's only 1 copy left, and so I go for the coal. As said, that is definitely quite lucky for me that it is revealed, and quite annoying for Airren that he has spent a civil action on this hate draft now. And yeah, I used the efficient upgrade with the Silk Road bonus, because that allows me to go for a second upgrade without a yellow card, and then I still have 1 resource left, which allows me to go for an upgrade to Swordsman, which makes it that I'm still the strongest even after my turn. And then I can use the Rich Land with the Silk Road bonus hopefully at the next turn. So I thought that might be the best way to handle that. I am with having to pay 3 civil actions for the coal, sadly can't take any of those yellow cards, so it's definitely still hurting me that Airren took the coal away, but I still was just very happy. I think it's very nice for me to get this production going now. Now I can maybe go for a strong wonder, even potentially like Ocean Liner Service or Railroad, so that might be quite a crucial moment in this game that Airren went for the hate draft, but then I was lucky and get the second copy of coal immediately. I keep the scientific cooperation, the tactic, and a colonization card. I draw the iconoclasm and the spy. Binki this turn goes for the journalism. He has some free population and wants to improve his science production. Also, he is already at 8 culture production now, so he definitely might have a culture lead at some point. And then he also takes 2 yellow cards. It's a very full hand now. Even with the library, he can't take any additional cards in hand now, but also, of course, can maybe get quite a bit of value out of those cards. Himmelstosh seeds and the raiders are revealed, so Airren and Himmelstosh both have to lose some stuff. Himmelstosh goes for the rifleman. It's a very important technology to have for him. He develops it, uses Barbarossa, and it will be the last time he uses him, because now he will make a switch to Maria. He has some additional yellows, he has some additional food production, so Maria might be quite strong for him. Can increase his population at his next turn, can maybe already get some additional resources out of her at his next turn. So Maria might be quite nice, and all of those leaders that are on the row are the only leaders, or actually all of the, no, I think one leader, Nobel, is already out, but now all of the other leaders are on the row, so Himmelstosh maybe wants to make a decision now, so that he, otherwise maybe Maria would have been taken away and he has to work with one of the other leaders, and so he just goes for Maria already this turn. Could have potentially kept Barbarossa for maybe another activation, but instead he rather already wants to go for Maria this turn. And then he also takes the organized religion, which I think makes a lot of sense, because he still needs a happy face solution. Airren grabs the reserves, goes for the constitutional monarchy, he finally can get a government form going, and now together with the Kremlin, he is now at 7 civil and 6 military actions, so that's definitely quite strong. He is definitely not a bad position here, and then he is willing to take the cavalryman for 3 civil actions. He has only the warrior still. The first copy of rifleman is taken away. Maybe he just felt it could get a little bit too dangerous if he doesn't take it in order. And also there are just a lot of leaders in the row, meaning he also doesn't have that many alternatives to take, and so he just goes for the cavalryman, dispense a warrior, builds 1, even 2 cavalrymen, reveals the phalanx tactic, is now at 14 strength, and makes sure that he is not the weakest after his turn. And then it is my turn, and I made a decision here to seed the iconoclasm. This turn I have to make a decision on a leader, because those 4 leaders are the last ones that are available. And all of them are maybe not too great for me. I at the end make the decision to go for Catherine, and so I thought the Iconoclast might be quite nice to have in the deck. Maybe losing Maria will be more annoying for Himmelstosh, maybe losing Nobel will be more annoying for Airren, and Binki also maybe. Maybe he will even go for Shakespeare potentially, but he has no opera yet, so that would be a little bit of a gamble, but I also thought maybe for Binki it could be annoying. I have the knowledge about it, so if there's an early H3 leader, maybe I can just pay a little bit extra for him to make sure that I have a leader available. So I was then with that willing to seed iconoclasm here. Also I know that one of those 2 events is the wealthy territory. I'm not the weakest. And and then there is indeed a wealthy territory revealed. I was willing to bid 1 unit because I have no food to increase my population and rebuild it, but Binki is at the end able to win it, and he wins it for 1 swordsman. I go for 1 upgrade to the coal, so my coals are now fully upgraded, which is quite nice. I can use the rich land with the Silk Road bonus, and as said, I just go for Catherine here. I of course could go for Darwin, but I think losing the happy face from the religion might be quite annoying. I have only 1 colony, and don't have any knowledge about more colonies to come, so I think James Cook doesn't make that much sense, and Shakespeare also would be very, very difficult to pull off here. So I think Catherine is just the best here. And maybe she actually will be better than I originally thought when I seeded the Iconoclasm, because after I seeded it, of course, I thought about my turn before. And I thought maybe I just take Breakthrough and Frugality, or what I maybe found the most interesting was then to go for the Architecture and develop it already, because that means that even if a Wonder is available for 3 at the next turn, like Ocean Liner Service or Railroad, I could potentially just take that Wonder and finish it, and that could be a very nice way to invest my resources. So I thought it could be very nice to set up for that with already developing the Architecture, and if none of those Wonders is available, even the Eiffel Tower could be quite fine here, I think, with having that many resources. But then I actually had a new idea, and with that idea Catherine might actually be stronger at the end, so maybe I could even regret it a little bit to get the Iconoclasm into the deck, but I think it might also still be fine, because I actually made the decision to go for the Republic here. The thing is, if I don't go for the Republic here, I stay on Theocracy, and if I go for Catherine, I drop down to 5 civil actions, and I just think it's very bad to be in low civil actions in a 4-player game late in the game. It very limits myself. And also, I have a lot of resources, and with being low on civil actions, I can't invest those resources that nicely. I have the Silk Road, so having more civil actions also is still very nice for that. And so I was actually willing to go for the Republic here, together with Catherine, to at least have the 3rd military action. And also I could of course wait for an H3 government, but both Binki and Himmelstosh also have some decent science production, both on monarchy, so both of them want to also maybe have an H3 government, especially Himmelstosh, who has also the Statue of Liberty. So I thought the H3 governments might be very contested. I don't know when those will be available, and the Republic will just give me a very big boost. And so I made the decision to go for the Republic here, because I felt like staying on Theocracy could be very limiting for me in H3. before I develop the Republic, will make use out of the military action from the Theocracy to reveal the classic army. Of course, I show it to my opponents. Binki, for example, can go on for knights now. Himmelstosh can copy it very easily. Airren can go for riflemen, maybe copy it, so that's a bit annoying, but the thing is also that the Cold War is coming and I want to make sure that I'm one of the two strongest, so I am willing to reveal the classic army here, and then after using the military action from the Theocracy, I then go for the Republic. I'm now at 9 civil actions at the moment, at least as long as I still have Saladin. I take the Breakthrough, that is a very strong card together with the Silk Road. I also wanted to have the Frugality, because I don't have the most food production. Also with losing the Happy Phase from the Theocracy, I maybe have to put worker earlier into a Happy Phase solution, so I thought having the additional food might be quite nice to have. And then there's the question what to do with my last civil action. I could of course increase my population, but it is a bit annoying because I then can't use the Frugality, and that might have some bad consequences, because then I will have 2 food at my next turn, and then in 2 turns I will have 4 food. But at this point, the age very likely will have ended, and then I will be at the next area of my yellow bank, so 4 food also would not be enough, and then maybe I even have an uprising issue in case I don't get this organized religion. So I didn't really like that much, and at the end I even considered skipping the civil action, but at the end I just developed the bread and circuses. It's maybe not as efficient as a Happy Phase solution as the organized religion or the team sports could be, so I was not too happy about the solution. But on the other hand, at least I spent the civil action already now this turn, and I have an arena available, which might be nice because there's Pierre with having seeded Iconoclast. I maybe want to have an early replacement leader in H3, and with having the arenas, I maybe have another one that I can go for. So at the end, I just used the civil action to develop the bread and circus, and also as you can see, I was not willing to elect Catherine yet. I think it's maybe a close decision. Of course, if I elect her, maybe I have even the chance to use her ability already at the next turn. I would get 1 additional draw, but I already have a tactic that I can go for. And I just thought then, because when I talked about the architecture and setting myself up to just take and finish a wonder, that is also possible with going for the Republic. So that is also a nice side effect. I also have this option now available. And if I just take and finish a wonder for very expensive, then the civil action from Saladin could still be useful. I could still take a wonder for 4 and finish it with 4 civil action, even when I go for Catherine. But now with Saladin I would have 1 civil action left. That might already be quite nice to have. And so I thought that 1 civil action could still be worth more than the 2 culture and the 1 additional draw. So I kept Saladin for 1 more turn. And I draw sadly no event. That could be the disadvantage, so the draw could still be important, because if I should still be one of the 2 strongest at my next turn, it could be very nice to push and maybe potentially push the Cold War out of the deck. So that could have been a reason, but it's only 1 additional draw, and the chance that will make the difference between drawing an event or not is maybe not that high, and maybe I can also manage without having an event available. Maybe even someone will accept the scientific cooperation potentially. Binki will go also for the bread and circuses this turn, builds 1, goes for James Cook. He has now 2 colonies after he won the wealthy territory, takes the cannons, and he will reveal the defensive army tactic now. And he won't switch to James Cook yet. He very likely will have another turn with Jan Žižka, and then he can go for cannons and will make sure to have enough strength even when he switches to James Cook. Himmelstosh seeds, and the cultural influence is revealed. With that, Catherine would have even given me 4 additional cultural production if I would have elected her the last turn with the normal production and that one. So with that, maybe that already would have been the tipping point to elect her, because it was already a very close decision, and with that maybe it would have been better to have Catherine now. Himmelstosh upgrades his 2nd farm. Of course, getting the food production as early as possible might be quite strong with Maria. He takes the cannons, he takes the architecture, and also plays the reserves for resources, and then goes for some upgrades. Interestingly, he doesn't play it for food. That of course also could be nice with Maria, but a resource of course also might be quite nice for him to have. He also makes sure to get even stronger, stays the strongest. The ocean liner service is already coming down the road, so if I want to go for a wonder, that could be a solution, but I maybe thought a railroad could be even better for me in this situation, especially because of the Cold War and because it could be important to still be competitive in the strength. Airren then seeds, and the immigration is revealed. Himmelstosh loses a worker, so that's a bit annoying for him. And then sadly the Cold War isn't revealed. I was really hoping that maybe it is already out. Then maybe I could go for the ocean liner service more easily. But like this, Airren will copy this tactic. And he actually won't get stronger. He is not willing to pay 3 civil actions for the rifleman. Instead he goes for the scientific method. He's now at 8 science production. And maybe is just hoping to get the rifleman at the next turn, but he doesn't get stronger. Now we can see that it's definitely a bit annoying to not have an event available, because just maybe having a chance to push the Cold War out of the deck now would have been very nice. And now I potentially have the chance to offer the Scientific Cooperation Pact, but the thing is, this turn I won't develop a technology, and as when we take a look at my opponents, we can see Binki has a lot of science saved up, has the Revolutionary Radio in hand, has some technologies that he wants to go for. Himmelstosh even 21 science saved up, has some technologies that he maybe wants to go for. And Airren has now 8 science productions. At this point I just felt I might be, my opponents would get more out of it, and I won't develop a technology this turn. And maybe at the next turn when I have some science saved up, maybe I can then offer it, but this turn I was not willing to do it. Maybe I could offer it this turn, and then because maybe at the next turn it won't be accepted potentially, but I also was just quite afraid that my opponents would at the end just get more out of it, and with that I was not willing to offer it here. As you can see, the railroad was revealed after Airren's turn, so now the big question for me was, do I want to go for railroad, for ocean liner service, or maybe even for the Eiffel Tower? Ocean liner service having that could be quite nice, because without it I will definitely be a little bit limited with my population. And especially with having relatively cheap units and needing quite a bunch of them to maybe go for a second army, the additional population from the ocean liner service could be quite important. But at the end I just thought the strength from the railroad might be even more important. For example, if I go for the ocean liner service, then it could be that Binki goes for cannons, and he has the potential to maybe even just build 2 cannons at this turn. Then he would be at 19 strength, and that would mean that even if I maybe after I use the ocean liner service build another unit, even then Binki would be stronger, then I would not be one of the 2 strongest any longer. Himmelstosh could cede, and then the Cold War might be out without me being part of it. And so I thought, because of the additional strength, and of course also giving 3 additional resources, the railroad is more important here, and hopefully I will manage with my current amount of population. Maybe I also will have a chance to get an early mechanized agriculture potentially, and so I just went for the railroad. Of course I also need to switch to Catherine this turn. With the additional strength from the railroad, maybe there's also even a chance to use Catherine's ability at the next turn, and then I have 1 civil action left, and I will use that just to increase my population this turn, use the frugality, and get 4 food out of that yellow card. I could have potentially thought about maybe taking the opera. I have a bunch of resources, so maybe having something to invest those resources might be quite nice. But I also don't have the most population at the moment, so I just felt I don't really need the opera, and with having that much production, not the most population, it might even be better to go for movies at some point instead of the opera, and I just felt like I can't really invest into that. Also, I still thought that maybe if the ocean liner service should still be available for me at the next turn, I could still consider going for it, because just getting a little bit more population might just be very, very helpful for me. I have lots of resources, so investing 10 into the ocean liner service isn't the biggest problem. The bigger problem would be that it costs a lot of civil actions, but who knows, if they are not if there are not the best alternatives available, it could be an interesting option, and with not taking the opera, it also is more likely that the ocean liner service will be available for me at the next turn. Then I can keep 3 cards in hand. I also draw an event now, so the next turn I can potentially push, and I also have another tactic, but with having the classic army, I maybe will just stay with that, unless I maybe can send some swordsmen away for a colony. Binki builds 1 cannon, switches to James Cook, is then at 16 strength, and then he is not going for another cannon, instead for another journalism, is now at 7 science production, 11 culture production, so he is maybe starting to get a bit of a culture lead. Plays 2 reserves of food that allows him to increase his population at the next turn, so that if he loses the 2 yellow tokens, which will happen, then he can increase his population still and maybe build a bread and circuses. Himmelstosh will go for the ocean liner service. That of course makes some sense with having Maria. He has already selected breeding a decent yellow bank, so he maybe could have also managed without it, but with having Maria, it might still be worth it. He will have a lot of population, and with the architecture he can maybe also finish it relatively efficiently, and that sadly means that the ocean liner service won't be available for myself. And Himmelstosh will get some value out of Maria with increasing his population 2 times, uses the additional resource that he has to build a knight, and then copies to the classic army tactic, uses his military actions once he is as long as he's still in age 2. Now age 3 starts, and Airren will go for the selective breeding. He had to wait a little bit for that one, but now he can finally start getting some additional population going. But he is actually not developing it already this turn. Instead, he also wants to take some yellow cards, and what is of course also important is going for the Rifleman. And I think maybe going for, I mean, it maybe would have been possible to go for 2 selective breeding upgrades and also a little bit for Rifleman. But he probably would not be able to go for 2 farm upgrades and 2 upgrades to Rifleman, which is maybe what he wants to do in order to not get hit by Catherine. So he waits with going for the selective breeding another turn. Maybe it could, of course, be a bit annoying for him to get the food production going that late, but like this at least he can go for 2 upgrades. He will copy the classic army tactic, is now 23 strength. That means he won't get hit by Catherine, and he also sadly is now prepared for the Cold War, so at my turn I have to make sure that I get stronger again. But there also will be a nice way for me to do it, because the strategy will be available for me at my turn. I was very happy to see that, because that means even if the Iconoclasm should remove Catherine, I now have a way to get more military actions and also a nice way to get more strength. This turn I was again willing to offer the scientific cooperation. I offered it to Binki. Still was a little bit afraid to offer it to Airren because he has more science production, more science saved up, has a bunch of technologies in hand, maybe wants to even go for opera and selective breeding relatively soon. Himmelstosh I just also felt like he has too much. He will go for the architecture very soon, maybe either justice system or civil service. At the end I just offered it to Binki, also has a bunch of science saved up, has also some decent science production, but he has no technologies in hand at the moment, can maybe also go for either justice system or civil service, but I felt like he maybe doesn't go for that many technologies, but maybe he still has a fine enough production to accept the pact, but sadly he will reject it. And then I will go for the strategy this turn, develop it with the breakthrough, get a Silk Road bonus for that, and now I'm already at 24 strength. I also want to fix my happy faces with going for the Brandon Circuses, that makes even sure that I'm the strongest after my turn. Also a card that I really wanted to have is this copy of tanks, because now with not having the Ocean Liner service and with having strong resources, I think it could just be very annoying to just have those Knights and Swordsmen to build, and being available to go for the tanks, going for some upgrades, get some strength like that, could I think be very, very important. And so I wanted to have those tanks available, and now I have 1 civil action left. And the question is, how do I want to get out of corruption? I think there are a lot of different things that I could do for that. I could just build a unit, getting more strength, maybe making it even more likely that I can use the Catherine bonus, being better prepared for the Cold War. Also I have 2 colonization cards in hand, who knows, maybe there's a colony coming. Binki went for James Cook, for example, and then I could bid for the colony without losing the classic army tactic, so that could be nice. And then with my last civil action that I would have, then I could maybe take the Urban Growth, for example, which on the other hand is maybe a card that I don't really need that much, because I have really strong resource production, so it's maybe not really a necessary card for me, but maybe could still be fine. So that could be an option. Could also be an option to build another farm. That might at some point still be nice to get some more food production, but I also was maybe still hoping to at some point get the mechanized agriculture, and then the next population would be unhappy. I would have to put it into bread and circuses. I could also think about building an additional alchemy, but I think that might be a little bit problematic, because then the next population that I will get will be unhappy, and that could just, as I said, could be a little bit problematic. So even though the additional science production might be nice, I was not willing to do that, and at the end I just built even another bread and circuses. I was not too happy about the solution, but at least it means that the next population that I get will be happy. I thought maybe I want to build this arena at some point anyway. I mean, maybe if I can use the bonus of Catherine at the next turn, then I could even, for example, build the alchemy with the additional yellow token. My next population would then be happy. So I'm not certain if this is the right decision, but maybe I will need a happy face at some point. And so I thought it's just a civil action that I can already spent, and if I really need population, I can maybe also potentially disband this religion at some point. Yeah, but I'm not too certain. Maybe just building a farm, building an alchemy could also be interesting solutions here, but it is also nice to get a little bit of additional strength going, because either with building a unit or with building the bread and circuses, because if I would only be at 25 strength, Himmelstosh with Maria's additional resources might just go for this upgrade, would get stronger, and Airren at his turn can also go for an upgrade, would then be at 25 strength, so if I go for either farm or alchemy, then I might not be able to use Catherine's ability, so then I again might not have my next population, and again might not be happy. And but now that I have additional strength, going for an upgrade to Rifleman is not enough for Airren to get enough strength to not get hit by Catherine, and he can't really easily get more strength. So I thought getting some additional strength might be nice, and at the end building the bread and circus felt a little bit nice for me than building a unit, but it was a very close decision. It also didn't feel too great to build this bread and circuses. But at least I have another arena, who knows, maybe I can get an early PR. That of course could be quite nice, especially with knowing that the iconoclasm is coming. In general, I was relatively happy about my position. I have already produced a decent amount of culture thanks to having the Silk Road. Binki is running a little bit away, but I have the second most culture available. I have very strong resource production, decent science production, but also a decent amount of civil and military actions. So I thought I have quite a strong position, but one big issue that I have is that I really don't get a lot more population out, and that is definitely my big weakness, which could be problematic, because without new population it might also be difficult to actually use those resources very nicely. So I was really hoping to maybe get mechanized agriculture, or if not, maybe computers, to find something nice to invest into. Otherwise, maybe I could have some issues because of my low population. And I draw the impact of population. That one probably I won't see it unless I get an early mechanized agriculture, and there's actually one coming down the row. Problem is, Airren didn't commit to the selective breeding yet, and he might rather go for mechanized agriculture, so I was not too certain if I will be able to get that. No. And I have 2 more colonization cards, so if there's a colony, maybe building an additional unit could have been also quite interesting now. And now it's Binki's turn. He actually goes for the democracy for 3 civil actions. That makes a lot of sense. Of course, it gives him even more culture reduction, boosts his economy with getting more civil actions, and also he takes it away from Himmelstosh, and him getting the democracy also would be quite strong, especially with the Statue of Liberty, but he also will still get a civil service, so he also will get something nice to get more civil actions. And then, to not have an uprising, Binki increases his population and builds another arena to get out of corruption. Then it's Himmelstosh's turn. He goes for the civil service, invests the science like that. Also goes for the architecture, finishes the ocean liner service, gets a new population out, takes the patriotism. And then Airren cedes, and the Cold War is finally revealed. I was very happy that I managed to be part of that. Having the 6 additional science could potentially be quite nice. And sadly, Airren will indeed go for the mechanized agriculture. That's very nice for him, and of course he also removes a nice option from myself. He will only go for 1 upgrade for now, and then instead takes the urban growth and also the rockets. The rockets will maybe allow him to go for an H3 tactic, and who knows, maybe he could even already have an H3 tactic available. And now it is my turn, and none of the players got stronger, especially interestingly in Himmelstosh's case, because he could have just gone for this 1 upgrade, and then he would not get hit by Catherine now, because I will use Catherine now. Maybe he wanted to get 3 draws, maybe he didn't want to commit this warrior, but I think it could have been quite interesting for him. Like this, he just didn't use Maria's additional resource, so I was a little bit surprised by that, and now I can even steal a yellow token from all of my opponents, and also the yellow token might at some point be quite nice to have for myself. And also I will switch to a new leader this turn, especially because the iconoclast might be coming soon, so this turn I really wanted to use Catherine's ability. And then I will go for Marie Curie. I also thought about Mandela. I of course would have to pay the additional civil actions to take him, but then I would be even sitting at 9 civil actions. I would gain 4 culture reduction, and maybe at some point even more potentially, or even less if I get more population out, but he will give me more culture than Marie Curie. I have to pay more civil actions, but at least I get the civil actions back, so maybe that balances itself out. Probably it could maybe still be better to just not pay that many civil actions now, but who knows. But Mandela would give me more production. Also, I thought it could be quite annoying if Himmelstosh gets Mandela, because he can take him without having to pay additional civil actions, can go for very cheap organized religions with the architecture, and I thought that might be quite a strong leader for him. But at the end I just liked it more to go for Marie Curie. She doesn't give me as much culture, but she gives me some additional science production as well, which could be quite nice. I get her for one civil action. I maybe have the potentials to still go for computers at some point. And so I at the end liked it more to go for Marie Curie. And with not paying the additional civil actions for Mandela this turn, first of all, before I elect Marie Curie, I still wanted to use the one military action from Catherine, and so I go for tanks for one upgrade. Then I can switch to Marie Curie, and I will just take all of those yellow cards, which might be nice with the Silk Road. The patriotisms might be very nice with the Silk Road, and I will also go for not upgrade. Sadly, that doesn't get me out of corruption, but I still wanted to do it to use the free military action that I have. And I thought, no, I'm not 33 strength, and I could maybe put some pressure on my opponents, maybe prevent them from going into more culture or economy, because they have to react to that. And with the patriotisms, I will be quite threatening. I always have the potential to get just 2 additional military actions at my turn, and if I draw some wars, maybe I could also execute one of them at some point. An alternative that I thought about was going for the Empire State Building. I have a lot of resource production, and maybe I can set myself up to get a decent amount of points out of that. Then I would already have a wonder. If I don't take a wonder now, then maybe those will be discarded. Fast food chains could also potentially be discarded, but might also just be taken away. For the Red Cross, I don't really have enough food, and then there's only one wonder left, so I was a bit worried about it. But the problem is with the Empire State Building, it can just be that opponents will maybe make it difficult for me to get a lot out of it. And also, at the end, I thought it might be quite nice to have all of those yellow cards in hand and to go for those tanks. So at the end, I skipped the Empire State Building, but it could be an interesting alternative. Maybe if I get computers, I can make sure to have the most science, but it's always not certain how much I get out of it. And so at the end, I rather didn't want to commit to this wonder, and instead went for all of those yellows and putting a little bit of pressure on my opponents. I keep all of the defense card and the popularization of science at this point. I discarded the scientific operation pact. Maybe it could still be nice, but with being potentially the strongest at the next turn, I just wanted to push, especially also with the iconoclasm being in there, and getting that out as quickly as possible might also be quite nice. And if I should get computers, the popularization of science has quite a big potential. I draw the military alliance, that could be nice to have at some point, or the Victor of Culture, which is at that point is maybe a little bit difficult to pull off. Binki is taking the modern infantry for 3 civil actions, so he definitely has to react a bit to my strength push, and he goes for the modern infantry. Can now get some strength with those upgrades, has the military theory in hand, maybe didn't want to give this technology that cheaply to Himmelstosh, who has a lot of science saved up. And then Binki is even willing to destroy one of his HA labs to even build another modern infantry like that. He is not the weakest after his turn, and also is not in any danger of an aggression. Himmelstosh uses Maria Theresa, one time builds knights, so this time he is using the resources again. He gets even 3 additional resources, and then, a little bit surprisingly, he doesn't go for Mandela, instead he goes for Steve Jobs. But Steve Jobs might also be quite a fine leader for him. He has some resource saved up. The happy faces will be quite useful for him, maybe making it that he doesn't even have to go for the organized religion necessarily, and he has some science saved up, so he might be able to get some value out of him. There will maybe be Nobel Prizes at some point, so it might be a nice Steve Jobs, but also I think Mandela might just be very strong still. I mean, with having the ocean liner service, his yellow bank will be empty relatively quickly maybe, or not empty, but will Mandela maybe doesn't give that much culture for him, but just 2 culture, potentially even a little bit more. And the civil action I still think is a very, very nice deal. The organized religion is also not that expensive. Maybe it could be an idea, but maybe also Himmelstosh just really wanted to get those computers going. And then maybe he felt like Steve Jobs is the nicer combination combined with those. And I mean, he definitely has the potential to get quite a lot of activations out of Steve Jobs, so it might work out relatively nicely for him at the end. And also with going for this rifleman, he's now at 36 strength and is now even the strongest. Airren seats, and there's the international agreement, so Himmelstosh gets rewarded for being the strongest, has the option to take some additional cards at this next turn. And then Airren will go for the fast food chains. That I think makes some sense, because there's the Red Cross, but after those 2 wonders, I said there's only the space flight left, so having a wonder available might be quite strong for him, and so he's willing to take the fast food chains. He increases population, has an unhappy worker now, and that will make it possible for him to go for Mandela, so he goes now for the additional civil action, and the culture production has a lot of science saved up, so going for some Nobel Prizes might definitely be possible for him, and he already develops the rockets this turn, builds one, disbands the warrior, reveals the modern army tactic and is now at 30 strength, make sure that he's not the weakest, and with modern army tactic he maybe should be relatively safe with his strength. And also, as we can see, two of my opponents already went for new leader, and I was very certain that Binki might go for Pierre at his next turn, so the iconoclasm might at the end do not really that much damage to my opponents. I still wanted to seed the popularization of science. I was not confident enough that I can do something with the impact of culture. I could of course offer the military alliance, but I wasn't certain yet to which player I should really offer it to, and I thought this popularization of science has quite some potential. I will be taking the computers this turn, and then I have the potential to get quite a lot of culture out of that. And event revealed is the Independence Declaration. Binki will very likely just lose the Wealthy Territory 1 at his turn, so it's maybe not too bad, especially because he will also probably switch to Pierre, so losing the culture from James Cook is maybe also not that important. I thought about maybe just going this turn for computers and engineering, going for 2 computer upgrades, maybe then grabbing Revolutionary Idea, getting Nobel Prize already this turn, getting the science production up, getting a little bit of additional strength with Marie Curie, also a little bit of additional culture production, so that might just be very nice, but I just thought at the end it might be more important to take the space flight here. It is the last wonder that I can really go for. If I don't take it, then maybe Himmelstosh or Binki will take it, and then I will be without a wonder, and now my opponents will very likely be without a wonder, unless Binki maybe goes for the Red Cross, but he doesn't really have that much food available. So I thought the space flight is just too important here, and I took it. And then I have 3 civil actions left. Sadly, increasing my population and building a tank doesn't get me out of corruption, so that could be nice, maybe to just use the free military action, but with having the patriotisms I can maybe also just delay it. And so I thought about different things. I also thought about maybe going for modern infantry, just being able to upgrade even more units to get more strength, which could be nice with being on low population. I thought about revolutionary idea, engineering computers. And as I said at the beginning, I will go for the computers, and I also want to go for the engineering together with that. It will be nice for some impacts. It will be nice for Nobel Prizes. It will be nice maybe to finish the space flight and one civil action at the end, and it also will save me some resources. I already have a revolutionary idea in hand, so hopefully I will have enough science available. Sadly, of course, I will leave the revolutionary idea now to my opponents, and for Binki I think it will be quite a nice card, but I still rather wanted to have the engineering and the computers available for myself. And at the next turn I thought that hopefully I will be able to then go for engineering computers, score Nobel Prize, get a lot of science production, maybe even score more Nobel Prizes at the following turns, set myself up to have a lot of science production for the popularization of science. And I was also hoping that with having that many resources I will be able to threaten enough strength in case one of the other players will set up for a bit of strength. I mean, Airren has the modern army, so he has definitely a bit of potential. Himmelstosh, if he gets air forces, has a bit of potential, and will also get military theory maybe at his turn. So I have to be a bit careful, but I was hoping that I will find a way to prepare myself, even if I now don't go for the modern infantry. I keep the military alliance, I discard the impact of culture. I was just not convinced at all that I will be able to make use out of that, and I wanted to keep some colonization cards in hand, also the military alliance. And I draw the impact of harmony. Maybe that could be suitable, but it's also not that ideal for me. The armed intervention and the loss of serenity. I was hoping to maybe draw some science related impacts, but at least I have an impact that I can potentially seed, so that's also not too bad. Interestingly, there's a very late promise of military protection. Binki offers it to Airren, and interestingly Airren accepts it. It means that Binki gets an additional culture. Now Airren will maybe miss out on some culture, but maybe that he knows about some strength events, and with that maybe he is willing to get additional strength to not be the weakest. And because the pact will be discarded very soon when the age will end. Maybe he also has even some military or some war planned or something like that with additional strength. So interesting that he accepts it, but maybe the main reason for that could be some potentially bad events. Binki this turn will go for Pierre, is now at 16 culture reduction, so that's definitely quite a lot, and I was Not that certain if I will find enough, that I will be able to produce enough culture to catch up to Binki. At the moment, I don't have a war, and pulling off a war would also probably not really be possible. I have only the impact of harmonies. I might get a relatively nice base flight, but that alone might not be enough to catch up to Binky, so I was worried that maybe for first place it won't be enough in this game, but maybe if I draw some nice impacts, or if maybe one of my opponent's seeds impacts that could potentially be strong for me, there is definitely still hope left. And then Binki will increase his population, builds the cannons, now at 31 strength, will reveal the positional army tactic, is now at even 37 strength and is the strongest, takes the revolutionary idea and the reserves. Himmelstosh then will use the international agreement, takes efficient upgrade, military theory, urban growth, and the endowments. He gets a lot of cards that event can definitely be very, very strong, has a lot of potential. It also means that the game accelerates relatively quickly, so my next turn might already be my second last turn. Himmelstosh then develops the military theory, gets some value out of Steve Jobs, goes for one more upgrade to the computers, increases population, takes the fundamentalism, plays the endowment for 6 culture, and also develops the organized religion, gets another 4 culture out of Steve Jobs, goes Nobel Prize. So Steve Jobs is definitely doing some a nice job for him. And at the next turn, he is also looking a little bit threatening. Because he has the fundamentalism taken, he also already has some military actions, but with the fundamentalism and with being at 17 resource, he could potentially declare war the next turn, go for fundamentalism, build 2 riflemen, build 2 knights, could just upgrade organized religion to have enough happy faces for 3 with the urban growth, and then he has quite a bit of strength, so I have to be careful. And also, of course, he could get air forces, and also like this he could get a nice amount of strength, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Then it's Irene's turn. He will be able to get a first copy of Air Forces. Now the Iconoclasm is revealed, but no player has any H2 leader left. And Irene will use the Frugality, builds Religion, getting a little bit of additional cards from Mandela. Now takes the Engineering Genius. That will be a very helpful card for him to maybe finish the fast food chains at some point. And then he takes the Air Forces, develops the Air Forces, builds one that is just enough to get out of corruption. He's now at 52 strength, but we also shouldn't forget that 4 strength comes from the promise of military protection. So at some point, or actually relatively soon, he will lose 4 strength and then he will be at 48. Also, he has not the most resource saved up, so he's actually not that threatening because he can't go for another army at this point. So I think Himmelstosh is quite a bit more threatening at this point. And of course I have to think about how much I want to prepare for the military at this turn. Also I have to think about if I want to cede or if I want to offer the military alliance to someone at this turn. I will get stronger, so now I'm the weakest. After my turn I won't be the weakest. An impact of harmony is not that safe of an impact. I will build 1 more unit and then I have just 20, but I can't really destroy anything and put it into another area, and then already my harmony would be damaged. Some of my opponents have a lot more population, so then there's definitely the potential that those might get even more culture out of it. But at the moment, Himmelstosh, I mean, he can put a lot of workers into the religion, but maybe there's a chance that he will do some different stuff. Especially if he should go for a war, which might be possible. Irene might be a little bit in trouble because of his low resources that he has at the moment. And then it might actually be a fine impact, and actually one of the big reasons why I wanted to see that is that I wanted to increase the chances as much as I could that a popularization of science might still be revealed while the game is ongoing. Because I will go for computers this turn, and the way how I planned my turn, I might even go for 2 multimedias at my next turn, if everything goes right. And then I would be, I think, at something like 19 science production, and then it of course would be very, very great if the polarization of science is revealed. And so I wanted to see it now, and then maybe if I draw an event I could also see it at the next turn. So of course a little bit dangerous. I am the weakest, I could get punished, but just to maybe increase the chance to get a popularization of science out as quickly as possible, I wanted to see it now, and maybe if I want to have the pact I can still offer it at the next turn. Maybe the next turn I also will have more knowledge to which player it is best to offer to. Of course, it could also be that then it might not be accepted any longer if there's, for example, war ongoing against me, but I was hoping very much that I will be and that it will be possible for me to prepare myself to not get hit by a war. But sadly I get hit by something else, and it is the politics of strength. I was quite unhappy about it, because now it means that I won't be able to see an impact at the next turn. That means that the chances that the popularization of science is still revealed in time are not bigger, or are decreasing now. And also I have some impacts that could be quite decent, so not getting another chance to draw one of them is definitely quite bad. So I was quite unhappy, but it was a risk that I was willing to take, and I think I might also do the same thing again, because the popularization of science, it would just be very great if that event would still be revealed before the game ends. This turn I go for the computers. I also will go for the engineering. Go for 2 upgrades, getting Nobel Prize this turn. I will increase my population. I will use the wave as long as I still have it for 7 additional resources. Increasing my population at least means that I have only 2 corruption, and then I build an additional tank so that I'm at 40 strength. So like this I am not really that much in danger of getting hit by an aggression. And then with my last 2 civil actions, I will take the pro sports and the multimedia. I don't know if I will have a chance to get the Air Force at the next turn, but I was hoping that I threaten enough strength. I have the pro sports that I can maybe use to get some additional strength. I have those patriotisms to get more military actions, and I have just a lot of resources, so I always can just destroy a lot of stuff and build a lot of stuff. That's definitely something that I don't want to do, but just having the potential to do this might be enough to not get hit by a war, especially with Irene maybe being a little bit more vulnerable. And so I was willing to just play the turn like this, and then with taking Pro Sports Multimedia I make sure that I can go for another 2 technologies, another Nobel Prize at the next turn, 2 more technologies also for the space flight. And as I said, my plan was to maybe potentially even build 2 multimedias at the next turn, depending on what I think what impacts might be in there. But one thing that I could do is to develop both of those technologies at the next turn, finish the space flight, go for an upgrade to Pro Sports. Then I have enough happy face that I could delete a religion and a bread and circuses, and then I have still enough resources to even build 2 multimedias. So that could be an interesting turn, could increase my cultural production. If there's a chance that the popularization of science will be revealed, I would have a lot of science production. And so I thought that might be a quite interesting last turn. I kinda have to delete those happy face buildings because of the impact of harmony that I've seeded into the deck. I sadly won't draw any cards. That is definitely quite a bit annoying for me. And Binki, interestingly, will go for a war against Airren, but he at his last turn was willing to take reserves for quite expensive, and now we can see that he can go for the military theory. He can destroy some stuff, at least it will cost him a little bit for the impact of harmony, but if he also gets a successful war going, my chances maybe to overtake him are even less there, but who knows. Maybe he will now be well prepared for some impacts with destroying some stuff. And then with the reserves, he has enough resources to go for a second positional army tactic, which puts him at 65 strength, and he can potentially sacrifice a modern infantry to even go up to 70 strength. So yeah, that might be enough to win the war against Airren. Airren doesn't really have that many resources, so he can't go for another army, not even an outdated one, and that of course means that he doesn't have that much of a strength potential. And then Binki will take the reserves, has some resources left with that for the next turn, or maybe even food to avoid any uprisings. And there's even another war against Airren. He gets hit by 2 wars now. Himmelstosh will get the Air Forces, develops that, uses Steve Jobs again, builds an Air Force, builds another Air Force, now it's 67 strength, develops the cannons, again uses Steve Jobs, gets another Nobel Prize. So yeah, I have to say Steve Jobs definitely has given him quite a lot of value so far, and yeah, might have been the better leader for him than Mandela. And then he also takes the revolutionary idea, so that at the next turn maybe he can even go for another Nobel Prize if there are the right technologies. At the moment he has only the fundamentalism in hand, but there are some cheap technologies on the row with the rockets, but also left in the deck. Airren seeds and a crime wave is revealed. He has a lot of impacts drawn, so he can maybe still seed some nice impacts into the deck. Sadly, I and Airren will both lose 3 culture for the crime wave. And then Airren will take the reserves, will take the democracy, maybe he wants to develop that at the next turn, destroys the farm, increases population, builds 1 religion, and also builds one rocket, goes up to 53 strength, but he will get hit by 2 wars. He already is behind in culture. I mean, he will get 1 production now, so but he will get hit by 2 wars now, so it's not looking too great for him. But with having reserves and engineering genius, at least he maybe has a chance to. No, actually not. He is at the moment only at 6 resources after his turn, so with getting 8 from those 2 yellow cards, he's only at 14, so he at this point maybe can't even finish the wonder, but who knows, maybe he has also knowledge about one of those events, he has seeded some of those, and maybe then he can go for the fast food chains, because he was willing to take the reserves, and that definitely made it maybe look like he could potentially go for the fast food chain still. Sadly, didn't go for the satellites. He was hoping maybe he could go for a little bit more strength, but he goes for the religion. That will maybe give some culture for Mandela. Also, I thought it could potentially give a hint for this impact. I thought maybe that could be the impact of happiness. And so maybe that will just be the best turn for himself. I was hoping that he maybe gets more strength, because I thought that maybe Himmelstosh could maybe be a big contender for the 2nd place. I was thinking that Binki, maybe his lead will just be too big. He will also still get the Olympic Games, he will get this war. But Himmelstosh, he will get the war, but I will get the wonder. And with that, I thought it could be close between us. And of course, with that, I was hoping that Airren just destroys everything and builds as many units as possible. But of course, that then might not be the best for himself. So he gets hit by those 2 wars. And of course you could say he could have prepared better, but I think it wasn't actually possible, because when we take a look at the last turns before, there wasn't really any single yellow card available that could give resource for the military. So he had to work with the resource production that he had available, and that just wasn't then enough to threaten to go for 2nd army. So he maybe also was a little bit unlucky with not having any chances to take any of those resource yellow cards. I can't see an impact. What I can do is to do my part of Airren getting a little bit more strength, and I offered a military alliance for him. I was very certain that Airren won't have a chance to really finish before me with getting hit by those 2 wars, and I just thought those 3 additional culture that Himmelstosh now gains less could be very nice for me, and also Binki gains 3 less culture. I, at this point, didn't really have any hopes to still finish before him, but who knows, maybe if there are the perfect impacts, there could be something possible. And so with that, I offered a military alliance to Airren. This turn I will go for the Bro Sports, and as I said at the turn before, my plan was to maybe go for the multimedia and then either build 1 or maybe 2 multimedia. Sadly, the popularization of science won't be revealed now for certain, because Binki actually has not a single card in hand, meaning that only Himmelstosh and Airren can see it, but it is not enough for it there being a chance to see the popularization of science revealed. So I don't necessarily have to go for a lot of science production, and I also really felt like there might be the impact of happiness coming. Airren has seeded, I think, 3 impacts at this point, or he has seeded 2, but 2 impacts. And I mean, there are some impacts that are nice for him, but one of them is definitely the impact of happiness. That's also at the moment actually quite bad for the other players. And so I thought that might be in there, and maybe it could even be coming here already at this point, because Airren, as we saw, build a religion at this turn before, maybe just for the culture, also from Mandela, but it could also be a preparation for the impact of happiness. And with that, I was not really willing to go for 2 multimedias and destroy my happy faces for that. And there's also another option available that I can develop, a technology, and that is the movies. And with the popularization of science not being revealed, I at the end rather took the movies. I will develop the movies. I finished the space flight for 27 points, so that's a decent space flight. I upgrade one of my arenas. Now I can either delete an arena and build a movie, or disband the religion and build a movie. The religion gives me 1 safe culture, also +2 for variety. The arena gives me more happy faces, because if I destroy it now and build a movie, I have not the full happy faces any longer. It also gives me more for architecture and competition, and even we don't even have to compare the arena to the religion, the H1 arena, but even the H3 arena, because now when I destroy the religion, I even have enough resource left to go for another upgrade to Pro Sports. And then I just thought that might just be more likely that it will be rewarded for the impact, so I was willing to destroy the religion. I mean, it gives one safe culture, but I, as I said, thought it could be very likely that the impact of happiness is in there, and so I wanted to keep my full happy phase. With that, I wanted to keep the full arenas. I also wanted to keep my harmony of 20, so I can't really destroy any mines, for example. And now maybe I do one last thing now at my turn, which could potentially be wrong, because I have 7 resources left, so I can now disband a swordsman and build a tank. The thing is, at the moment I'm at 49 strength, and with that I could just be threatening to have 3 defense cards, and then I would not be in, and then Himmelstosh maybe could be afraid to go for an aggression against me. Binki has no cards in hand anyway. There will be the Olympic Games, and that was one reason why I thought that maybe Himmelstosh doesn't want to go for an aggression anyway, because he will lose 8 culture, of course, if he has an armed intervention, and maybe we two being contenders for the second place. It could still be that he goes for an aggression, but it would also mean that it maybe doesn't have a strong impact. And at the end, I just went for this. As said, Binki can't go for an aggression anyway because he doesn't have a card. Himmelstosh, I mean, he could go for a winning aggression anyway, but now he knows it for certain. Before that, he maybe could have been afraid, because then he could go for an aggression, but potentially it could just be not successful and then he would just lose 8 culture. So I would definitely be a bit more safe from an aggression from Himmelstosh if I stay at more strength. But I also thought that maybe with the Olympic Games ongoing, it's not that likely that Himmelstosh will go for an aggression. Maybe he rather wants to go for a potentially nice impact that he has. At least I was hoping that, but I'm not certain about this decision, because this upgrade also only does something for me if there is the impact of competition in there, which is not certain. And so maybe I should just not do it and keep the strength so that I may be more safe from aggression. I think that actually might be a mistake here. And then Binki will steal 14 cards from Airren. He is actually not willing to sacrifice, interestingly. Maybe wants to keep the strength. Then plays the reserves for food, goes for one more arena, goes for the satellites, and that's all that he will do. But it is very fine getting one more arena with Pierre, getting the satellites, which will be nice for some impacts potentially. Now, of course, it will be interesting to see, will Himmelstosh go for an aggression? First of all, he will steal 16 cards from Airren. And luckily he won't go for an aggression, so I don't get punished, but I still think maybe it wasn't the right decision, because if Himmelstosh has an armed intervention, maybe not the greatest impacts, then it definitely could make a difference if I can at least threaten to defend or not. On the other hand, there are Olympic Games ongoing, so it was a close decision, but I think maybe I should have rather just kept the strength, because the gain that I get from that is not that big. Only +2, only if the impact of competition is in there. Himmelstosh will seed, and the arms industry is revealed. We can see it. There are actually 2 additional resources for some players now, and now Airren has enough resource to finish the fast food chains at this next turn. Himmelstosh will go for the pro sports. He has actually enough science to go for 2 more technologies, also enough civil actions. Can also go for the rockets, develops the rockets, so another Nobel Prize. Again, 2 technologies with Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs at the end definitely was better than Mandela, so it was a very nice call by Himmelstosh. Maybe I would have been, in my love for Mandela, I would have been blinded and not gone, maybe wouldn't have gone for Steve Jobs here. I mean, maybe at the end I also would have considered him, but yeah, I think maybe I would have just gone for Mandela here. And who knows, maybe his additional civil actions also would have allowed some nice stuff for Himmelstosh. But with getting that many Nobel Prizes, and of course then 8 cards from Steve Jobs every turn, maybe at the end he was the right call from him. And then he also builds 1 more arena, making sure that he is the strongest, builds 1 more knight. Maybe there is even the impact of competition in there. There could also be the impact of strength. I was quite afraid of this impact, because that would give Himmelstosh quite a lot of culture against me. Airren seeds, and the impact of happiness is revealed. It is indeed on top, so I had the right gut feeling, and and I gain a 16 culture out of it. Binki only gains 14. And Airren this turn will go for the democracy, for the fast food chains for 20 points, and that is all that he will do. And then when we take a look at the culture before the final impacts, we can see that Binki has quite a big lead. Airren is quite behind. He has seeded some impacts, but he might just be too much behind to really have a big chance. But maybe there's still something possible. But the most interesting thing will probably be which player will be the second place. Will it be me? I'm at the moment at the second place, but only with the 5 culture lead. I have one impact of Harmony, which will give me +4 against Himmelstosh, but there are also some impacts, 3 other impacts, and now it will depend on those 3 other impacts, whether I will be second or third, or who knows, maybe Airren can also still make a comeback. First of all, there's the impact of government. It gives +20 for me, for Binki, for Himmelstosh, and +23 for Airren, so probably seeded by him. Then there's the impact of harmony. 16 for Binki, 20 for me, 16 for Himmelstosh, and 16 for Airren, so it gives me +4 for me against all of my opponents, so I have now a 9 culture lead. Sadly, there is indeed the impact of strength now, and that gives Himmelstosh +15 against me, so that is definitely quite bad. He has now a 6 culture lead before me, and there's now only one impact left that I don't have knowledge about. Will I have maybe a chance to overtake Himmelstosh again? There is the impact of agriculture, and sadly that won't be enough. Himmelstosh at the end finishes at the second place. Binki wins this game, and I'm at the third place. Airren at the last place. Now, so an interesting outcome of this game. I was a little bit unhappy because I felt I had a nice position going into H3 with all of those civil actions, with having strong production, and also I got the space flights. But I think one big issue for me was definitely my low population. I think that is definitely quite a bit limiting potentially, and I think so that was one issue. I think there could have been maybe some nice impacts for me, so that maybe also was not that ideal for me. At least the impact of harmony gave me a little bit of culture, but at the end Binki had some nice culture production and didn't get punished for it. He had the Michi Castle, he managed to defend himself, and with that he won the game, and also Himmelstosh with his very, very strong Steve Jobs at the end managed to overtake me. So sadly I only finished at the third place going into this stage of the tournament. For Airren it didn't go that great in H3. I think he had a solid position, a lot of civil and military actions, and but then he maybe didn't have that much chance to take some nice yellow cards. He had the modern army tactic, he got the air force, he had some nice tools to defend himself, but it at the end still was not enough, and he got hit by 2 wars. And also, what is the case for him is, I shared it in the Discord, that he because of that also got a little bit of additional reserve time, so that there are no timeouts, because he was traveling in Scandinavia for 2 weeks, and I think maybe once H3 started or something like that, and so maybe that were also not the ideal conditions for him to make his best turns, because he was probably maybe didn't have that much time to spend on through the ages, and especially for him, who is a player who really likes to look at a lot of details, and when you play against him you will very, very often and for a very long time see green lights in the games, showing that he is online thinking about the game. So for him maybe it's especially bad when he maybe doesn't have the most time available. So that's also a thing, and also as he shared in the chat, he actually, once he got hit by those 2 wars, he actually wanted to resign, but he played his turn on the phone and accidentally an event was seeded. He was at this time already traveling, so also didn't have the best internet connections sometimes, and sadly there was an event seeded by accident, and then he couldn't resign any longer. So that's maybe if he would have resigned, Himmelstosh would have gotten less culture out of the war. Maybe I would have had a chance at the second place, but I think Airren maybe could have at least had still some very small hopes. Maybe also not. I mean, there is quite a gap, but maybe with the perfect impacts. But I mean, he had knowledge about some impacts, so I think it maybe would have been a nice decision to resign, but there was maybe a small hope left. So I think it's also definitely fine to not resign, and but that maybe also could have changed a bit of things, but at the end, that of course can't be changed, and third place is still a somewhat fine result, especially because there's still a lot of games to come, and also Himmelstosh with his very nice Steve Jobs play just also has a deserved second place at the end, and Binki manages to win the first game. Alright, and now with having taken a look at the first game, we can also take a very quick look at the standings, because there also is already one game finish where I wasn't involved. And the other game finished was a two-player game between Himmelstosh and Binki, and in that one Himmelstosh was able to win. So both of them had quite a nice start. Himmelstosh has 7 points after 2 games finished, Binki has 6 points after 2 games finished. So yeah, quite a nice start for both of them. And for me and Irene, we both didn't have the ideal start. I'm at 1, Irene at 0 points, but the good thing is of course that there are many games left, so still a lot of opportunities to score some points. And I hope you're looking forward to the next games to come. There should be definitely some exciting matches with all of those strong players. Sadly, I will now be 1 week on a small vacation, so I won't be able to do any videos from there. So you have to wait at least 1 week for the next video, but hopefully I will then be relatively quickly after I'm back from holidays be able to record the next video. And so I hope you're looking forward to the next games to come. I hope it was an interesting game for you to watch, and then have a nice time and see you in the next video.